An eerie night stranded at an aging hotel turns into a stay in a notoriously haunted room with a sinister history. As strange forces torment the newest guest in room 304, the truth of its dark past comes to light. Will she uncover who or what inflicts madness on all who sleep there before it's too late? Hit like and subscribe for the chilling tale. The Chateau Grand Hotel had seen better days. The once luxurious rooms showed their age with peeling wallpaper and dated decor. The lobby emptied out after dark, save for the occasional guest stumbling up to their room after one too many drinks at the hotel bar. And the staff grew resigned, having worked there for years with little hope of change. This was the scenery that greeted me when I arrived in the rain one cold autumn night. I was relieved to have a room at all, given that I was unexpectedly passing through town after my flight got cancelled. The woman at the front desk checked me in without even looking up from her outdated computer. Room 304, dear. End of the hall on the 3rd floor. She slid a metal key across the counter. Elevator is around the corner and to your left. Have a good stay. I stepped out of the creaky elevator onto the 3rd floor a short while later. The hallway was dim, lit only by period-appropriate sconces on the walls that had probably not been upgraded since the 1960s. The carpet muffled my footsteps as I walked past identical wooden doors searching for 304. When I finally located it at the end of the hall, I noticed the door already hung slightly ajar. Odd for an unoccupied room, I thought. But I was too tired to think much of it. Lugging my suitcase behind me, I swung open the door. The room was unremarkable: 2 double beds with floral blankets, an old TV on a forward entertainment unit. Heavy maroon drapes were drawn over the window, blocking out the majority of the moonlight. But the eerie thing was the state of the room. The blankets and drapes were slashed and torn to ribbons, stuffing pulled out of the mattresses, the TV smashed. I backed up slowly. Had someone broken in before I arrived? I turned to get the front desk attendant when a hand grabbed my shoulder from behind. I jumped, stifling a scream before realizing it was just a maid. "Sorry, Hon, didn't mean to startle you," she said. "I was just bringing fresh towels." I told her about the state of the room. She frowned, looking troubled, and stepped inside to get a look. "That's strange," she said. "This room was empty and locked up last I checked." Before I could respond, the overhead light flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. The maid cried out, clearly unnerved. Moments later, the power clicked back on. "Must be faulty wiring," I suggested. But the maid remained visibly shaken as she excused herself and hurried off, promising to send maintenance. I probably should have requested a new room at that point. But I reasoned that I didn't have many other options at the late hour. Taking a cue from the slashed bedding, I decided to lay my coat down as a barrier before collapsing exhausted onto the bed. Maybe in daylight, things wouldn't seem quite so eerie. I woke some time later to the sound of crying. Still groggy, I sat up and glanced around the dark room, seeing nothing amiss. But the crying continued, so faint it almost sounded like a child whimpering inside the walls. My skin prickled with unease. I shook my head, telling myself I was imagining things, and tried to go back to sleep. Then I felt it. The mattress shifted under some unseen weight at the foot of the bed. I was paralyzed, listening to faint creaking springs as whatever it was moved slowly up along the bed. The whimpering grew louder until it was right by my head. My eyes squeezed shut. I was too terrified to confront what awful thing had joined me in that room. A small hand brushed my arm and my eyes flew open with a gasp. There was nothing there. Yet the indent of a hand remained on my arm where it had touched me. And the whimpering continued. I flew out of bed, grabbing my things, and ran for the door. This was no faulty wiring. Something was terribly wrong with that room. I didn't stop running until I was in the elevator headed down to the lobby. The front desk attendant looked shocked when I told her I needed a new room immediately. "Why, what seems to be the trouble?" she asked. I recounted the slashed bedding, flickering lights, cries in the night, all of it. She paled. "You were in 304, she asked. When I nodded, she said, "I'm so sorry, that room should have been kept vacant." Before I could ask what she meant, the employee entrance opened and a man emerged dressed in maintenance overalls, pushing a mop bucket. He seemed to know what room I had stayed in without being told. "It got you too, huh?" he asked me sympathetically. "That room has scared off many a guest over the years." I demanded an explanation. Sighing, he launched into the room's haunted history, which I listened to with growing dread. Apparently, 304 had long been host to unsettling occurrences, cries and phantom footsteps being the most common. But occasionally, the hauntings took a violent turn with dramatic acts of destruction that couldn't be explained. Previous guests had reported unseen hands touching them in the night, or conversely, waking to find new cuts and bruises on their bodies that hadn't been there when they went to sleep. And a few guests over the decades had even died in that room under ambiguous circumstances. The most chilling incident was from 1960, when a guest awoke to the sight of a pale young girl standing over his bed, her eyes black and vacant. She pointed at him and screamed, "You killed me," before vanishing. The man's hair had turned stark white overnight from sheer terror. He killed himself the next day, leaving a note confessing to a murder he had committed years ago as a child. A little girl he had lured to a remote spot in the woods and strangled before burying her body nearby. No one knew if this was a true confession or the raving of a madman driven over the edge. But rumors spread that the girl's vengeful spirit remained, haunting 304 and inflicting madness on any who stayed there. The hotel tried in vain to have the room permanently sealed off. But mysteriously, it would be found vacant and open time and time again, no matter what precautions they took. I shuddered as the man finished his story, glancing warily up at the floors above us. What twisted entities called that room home? And how many more unsuspecting guests would fall prey to the evil that dwelled there before the hotel met its inevitable demise? I cut my stay short, checking out that very morning despite having paid for 2 nights. As I loaded my bags into my car, I noticed the curtains in 304 fluttering through an open window. For a moment, I swore I saw the shadowy silhouette of a little girl peer out at me before vanishing from sight. Over a year has passed since that night, but I still sometimes wake in a cold sweat from the same recurring nightmare. I'm back in that hotel room, paralyzed with fear as icy hands creep up from the foot of the bed. And in the darkness, I hear the faint sound of a little girl crying.